Welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us. Democrats held state conventions over the weekend in California and South Carolina. I want to bring in our Bryson, who joins me here at the family table. She was in South Carolina, and Nidia Cavazos, who was in California, who joins us, as you can see, from Los Angeles. I want to play for you two sound bites, both from South Carolina, starting off with Wes Moore, the Democratic governor of Maryland, and Tim Walz, who, as we all remember, ran with Kamala Harris and is the current governor of Minnesota. Let's run them.
The American people don't care how many studies we publish on lowering prescription drug prices if working families still cannot afford prescription drugs. The American people don't care how many programs we fund on affordable housing if they still cannot get enough money to save for a down payment. Urgency is the instrument of change. And you know who actually understands that pretty well? Donald Trump.
We're facing a pretty unprecedented time in our history, but what comes with that is the privilege. We get to be part of that fight. When the story is written of what happened during this time period, they will scarcely believe that this country chose Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. But they did. But the real story that will be written is, how did we respond after that election?
Nidia, I want to start with you because you were in Los Angeles. Tim Walz was in South Carolina and also Los Angeles. What was your takeaway, if anything, from Tim Walz and the reaction of California Democrats to his presence?
Major Governor Tim Walz gave a very, very impassioned speech here in California. He was very welcomed by the audience, judging by how many times they gave him standing ovations. They repeatedly took a stance for him and applauded what he was saying because, one, he was very critical of Republicans in Congress for helping push President Trump's agenda. He was critical of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, but he was also critical of the Democratic Party for losing the working class vote in 2024. And he told his audience, I may not be the guy to be speaking because he was on the ticket running and they lost. But he says he does have a suggestion for how to improve and how to move the party forward. And he used his policies in Minnesota, his progressive policies, as an example of what actually represents the Democratic Party, according to Governor Walz.
And Nidia, it's always difficult to assess this across the room, but in general, did you have any sense of California Democratic reaction? Do they view Tim Walz as part of the answer for the future or kind of a relic of the past?
When we were speaking to some of the Democratic Party members and some of the delegates that we're hearing, they really mentioned over and over that they want to hear them take responsibility for what went wrong, analyze what could have been done better, and actually presenting ideas. And so they felt that they received this from Governor Walz. And now, former Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't there on Saturday, but she did leave pre-taped remarks. But you could certainly tell from the audience reaction that they wished they would have seen her as her comments were playing out, her remarks. People kept going on about their business. And you also had candidates who are running for governor in California go on about their business and actually use that moment to make their pitch to delegates who were in the audience as well.
Always counts to be there. Nidia, hold on for 1 second. Annie, I want to talk to you about South Carolina. So Wes Moore was there, and he had said a couple of weeks ago he's not running in 2028. You don't show up in South Carolina accidentally. So he clearly has designs. And in those remarks, we heard him talk about urgency and also give kind of a compliment to President Trump on the urgency of his administration. What would you say the general reaction among South Carolina Democrats was to the Maryland governor?
You could tell when this speech, in a way, was an introduction for Governor Moore to the delegates of South Carolina and to South Carolina Democrats as well. And so initially, you could tell in the audience there wasn't too much awareness of who this governor was. But then as he kind of continued speaking, and as you saw there, he was very engaged with the audience. And they really, started to give him standing ovations like they would give to Governor Walz the next day. And so it really was kind of building off of this, like, he is he's new on the scene, but he's also kind of, he's bringing in this sense of urgency.
And South Carolina uniquely was placed at the front of the primary calendar in 2024. What was the feeling there, as best you could tell, from people about whether it should retain that first-in-the-nation primary status?
It was definitely kind of mixed reaction from the delegates. You know, there were obviously those who were really in favor of South Carolina remaining the primary. They've talked about how, one woman I spoke to said that, you know, people migrate to South Carolina all the time. And so, you know, there's a possibility it could be a purple state in the future. But there was also a woman who said that, you know, we should maybe do a state like Georgia, have Georgia go first, given that, you know, it's voted for Democrats and Republicans in the past. And then, you know, one person also pointed attention to the 2026 midterms and said, you know, it's going to really depend on if Democrats can get elected in South Carolina, whether or not they should be going first in 2028.
Annie Bryson, Nidia Cavazos in Los Angeles, thank you so very much.